Disruptive technology has changed the business of the financial sector.
Any business in any industry that isn't focused on trying to think about how they should leverage AI is going to become obsolete.
Franklin Templeton is now one of the largest global investment managers with 1.6 trillion of assets under management. President and CEO Jenny Johnson joins us now. Thank you, Jenny, for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You took over in 2020, and with 8 acquisitions, you sort of set the company for the future. What was your thinking behind your acquisitions?
So really 2 things. We think there's 2 secular trends that we had to position the business for. The first was that there's just a massive increase in private market assets, and so we did acquisitions there. Today we're a top 10 alternatives manager with about 260 billion in alternatives. And then the second thing is just personalization and customization of client portfolios. And so we did some of the investments in fintech platforms that allow us to personalize client portfolios.
How important is for you the culture of existing businesses? For example, if you had a financially attractive company, but you didn't like the culture, would you still consider it?
I always say that the investment banker will tell you why it's a great price and why it's a great strategic fit, and they never talk about culture, and culture is what's going to make a deal work or not. And so when we are doing due diligence on a company, we are basically looking for, I say it's kind of the 3 C's of culture, and you could find this in the conversation. So number 1 is, how quickly did they first start talking about the client? Like, is client really at the forefront of what they're thinking about every day? The second is, watch how the management team works with each other. Do they have a kind of an environment of collaboration? Because if they're not going to collaborate amongst themselves as a team, they're actually not going to collaborate more broadly in the business. And the third is a mindset of continuous improvement. And I think that's incredibly important in a time where, as you mentioned, the great technological advances that are happening with things like AI and blockchain, that if you don't have a mindset in your culture about trying to figure out ways to adopt and leverage the new technologies to continue to evolve on behalf of your clients, you're not going to be successful.
But how do you welcome the disruptive element of technology in your sector?
So, I always say that, so I'm 3rd generation at Franklin Templeton. My grandfather started it. My father really built the business. My brother was CEO. And I always say my big fear is that I miss the obvious technology advantages that are here today that are going to make a difference between the winners and losers in the industry. And here at FII, Ruth Port was talking about the early days of Google. And she was talking about how there were something like 7 search engines, and people thought, why is Google coming along? Who needs an 8th search engine? But what the founders had kind of figured out is they could build an algorithm that searched and prioritized pages based on clients' viewing of those pages, so clients' interest in those pages. And that was actually a pretty new concept. So it was taking a technology that existed, leveraging it, and in the end, it essentially crushed all the original first movers. So I look at Franklin Templeton and say, we have to be thinking about blockchain and AI and making sure that we're pushing ourselves to think about how we can leverage this technology to have better outcomes for our clients.
You have talked about your readiness to embrace AI and the modern technology. How are you doing so at Franklin Templeton?
So, look, I think any business in any industry that isn't focused on trying to think about how they should leverage AI is going to become obsolete. But the reality is we are at such early innings as far as how this is impacting industries. But I think if you're not experimenting with it, building the muscle internally to start thinking about how you should leverage it, you literally are going to be left behind by your competitors. So we think about it in 3 areas. One is from operational efficiency. And usually with new technology, the first thing someone does, or individuals naturally do, is they make more efficient the things that they already do today, the processes that they do today. So I'd say we're focusing on that in kind of our operational areas. So to generate a first draft of a request for proposal from a client, historically has taken us 15 to 18 hours. In our initial pilot, we're able to produce that in 15 minutes with a 70% accuracy. So it still requires the individuals to customize and validate the data, but think about that difference in productivity. On our distribution client service side, we're trying to create, think about a ChatGPT interface type where you can ask and say, I'm going to visit this client. What would be the best use of that client's time? What can I think about? that's creating a platform of different AI algorithms to be able to go out and get information in your CRM system, maybe social media information about that individual client, and then finally on the investment side, a similar kind of interface. Imagine where you can, a research analyst can say, I'm thinking about how AI may impact my industry in the auto sector. It'll go through all your own research reports. It can go through the sell side research reports. It can go through industry and social media and bring you back kind of ideas. Think about how much efficiency that would create for a research analyst, but it's a complicated technical problem. And so I think that's kind of the evolution. And then once you build the muscle internally, I think that's where you really get breakthroughs, where individuals who are doing the work every day start to say, hey, I know how to use this tool, I can apply it here.
In this part of the world, what investment opportunities are you particularly excited about?
So first of all, I think that there are some global trends that are interesting from investment opportunities, not just here, and I'll talk about in this region next. But I think that, secondary is private equity because of the massive amount of private equity that's been deployed and the need for liquidity, and there's not that many secondary managers. Their ability to kind of absorb that liquidity at really favorable prices is a great opportunity. So I think that's an area. I think real estate debt, because of dynamics in the US, is going to be another really interesting opportunity. And then I think in this region, you take Saudi Arabia, right? Vision 2030 gives so many opportunities. There's clear paths of objectives that are going to open up opportunities for investors who either want to own the debt and stay on the fixed income side or actually own the equity. And so in growing economies, there is always tremendous amount of opportunity.
This is a year of elections in many parts of the world. To what extent do you feel that elections actually do have an impact on the overall investment climate and pace?
Look, it matters, right? But a company like Franklin Templeton that's been here for over 75 years, we have to have a lot of elections, and you continue to manage. And I always say, the US president always gets way more blame for a bad economy and way more credit for a good economy. But then on the margins there are differences, and so you figure out where the investment opportunities will come based on policies that particular administration will deploy.
You mentioned that 2% of venture capital goes to women entrepreneurs. How can we change that atmosphere and lift it up?
No, I think that's, first of all, and not only that, not only does it 2%, but they tend to have twice the returns of the average venture capital fund, right? So
there's no financial logic.
That's right, that's exactly, and I think that's an inherent bias that naturally can happen with people. We invested in a company which actually did get funded, but called Rent the Runway. And in the US, if people are going to a formal event, men wear a tuxedo and women will wear a gown. These gowns are ridiculously expensive. And so how are you going to be able to buy? And by the way, you can't wear the same gown multiple times, as you know. That would be terrible, right? So, they came up with this concept of why can't we rent gowns? Now, you can imagine pitching it, and if it was an all-male venture capital panel, they'd think, what's the big deal? I've been wearing the same tuxedo for 20 years. I don't get the problem, right? So the ability to connect with the investment opportunity means we need more diverse investment teams. And that goes for women, socioeconomic, ethnicity, everything. They're going to find opportunities that others may overlook. The issue, I think, with women getting into financial services, we actually tend to lose them in high school and college. So we actually, just on October 8th, launched a program with Princess Nora University where it's an 8-week program. We have 150 women who have signed up, and they go through a series of investment courses. We have a Franklin Templeton Academy, so we modified them. And these are sophisticated investment courses: portfolio construction, risk management, investing in a global macro environment. At the end, they get a certificate, and then we will hire some portion of them as interns in our shop, and we are actually working and talking to other partners who are interested in bringing these women in as interns. Hopefully with that exposure, that will attract them to the industry.
So what you're saying is acting, not just talking about a problem.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.